that you know that today is the deadline for dual enrollment, and you have until 11:59 p.m. You must submit your application to the website. I'll have that on Google Classroom for mine. I believe that Mr. Preister already has his on there. Okay, remember, today at 11:59 p.m., if you intend to dual enroll, that's your deadline. Okay.
No, that's good.
All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to remind the crowd to please refrain from talking. Let's go ahead and keep it down. This is not an interactive debate. These young men have come here to get their ideas out. We want to thank you so much. All right, welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. We had such an informative debate last week, and I know you guys wanted one more chance to get your information out. Just a note to the audience, these candidates have not been provided with questions for this debate. They know general topics, so they must be thinking on their feet. We ask you to please remain quiet during this debate. I'll give each of you about 30 seconds to answer the question. After 30 seconds, I'll kind of give you a sign, hey, speed this up. If you keep going beyond a minute, I'll probably just cut you off, okay? But last time you guys did a great job, so I assume you will this time as well. Mr. Lopez, there has been questions about this campaign and about your thoughts on the economy. There's been a lot of reaction to your idea that inflation is going to solve our problems. We wanted to give you this opportunity right away to set the record straight on how you're going to fix the American economy and provide jobs to the American people.
Hello? So for me, I would say by reducing taxes and regulations on businesses to encourage investing and to address the income inequality, if that also helps. I also want to encourage economic growth to create more opportunities for upward mobility. Sorry if I'm out of breath, I ran through that robotic science.
Well, that's okay. I don't know that physical fitness has been a concern in this campaign, but maybe the economy was, so thank you for that answer. Mr. Gerard, are you comfortable with this response, lowering taxes, or is that a similar plan, or what's your plan?
I think lowering taxes is similar to my plan. However, I think just in the last bit when he said we just need to print more money, that was very unwise to say such a thing, because that is why we're in this mess with the economy in the first place, because we have made more money. So I think the only way to get our economy back on track is to become energy independent and overall 4% average middle class tax increase from 13.6% to 9.6%. Those are the only two ways that we will get our economy back on track and become the #1 world superpower once again.
Mr. Steele, is that an aggressive enough plan? 4% tax reduction for the middle class?
It sounds like a fair number. Why is this mic this loud? It sounds like a reasonable number. I'm sure he's considered the statistics very thoroughly, as he's not afraid of telling us. I would honestly be willing to push for even more than that, though, if it meant helping the American middle class, if it meant helping our taxpayers, and if it also meant improving the economy.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Lally, speaking of economy, a lot of people have speculated that it was the world, and specifically the United States reaction to COVID-19 that caused a lot of the economic woes that we faced in this country. Do you believe that our reaction to COVID-19 was a detriment to our economy, and more importantly, was it too aggressive? If we were to do the whole thing again, would you take a less aggressive stance on combating COVID-19?
I definitely think it was way too aggressive. My own father was out of business for months at a time without getting paid. And I just think we were way too aggressive on COVID, and we should have went easier. We should have learned everything first before we started jumping on vaccines and shutting things down.
Okay. Thomas, how do you pronounce your last name again, bud? Savas. Mr. Savas, do you agree with your counterpart here that we were going a little too aggressive on COVID back in the day?
Yeah, I agree with him, honestly. I think we were kind of a little too aggressive. We just need to like be more laid back and stuff, so I think that's mostly what we're gonna do.
Okay. Very good. Let's remind the audience, this is not an interactive debate. We appreciate your love for Mr. Savas, but let's go ahead and keep it down. Well, Mr. Gerard, one thing that you guys have been collectively criticized for are those Second Amendment rights. Several people have come up to me saying they want to support the Republicans, but their main concern is their own safety, and they don't believe that Republicans are doing enough to keep school children safe. Is there any way you can convince these people that you do care about children's safety?
As I said before, the number one priority for the whole gun issue is making sure that school shootings end and do not ever happen again. With that said, bans are not the answer. Guns will still come up illegally, they will still be used on the black market. Bans are not the answer to this problem. The answer is more thorough background checks and tighter regulations on who can own a gun and who can be fit or unfit to own a gun. Mental health checks, I'm not an expert on the issue, so whenever it would be fit for like a yearly checkup on someone's mental health, but bans on law-abiding citizens are not the answer to this problem.
Mr. Steele, do you agree with this, that mental health should be a big factor in who can and cannot own a weapon?
I believe it already is. You're not allowed to own a gun if you have a note from a doctor saying that you were been declared mentally unfit. I don't believe in any measure that makes it harder for a law-abiding citizen to acquire and own a legal firearm. However, background checks are something that I'm willing to compromise on. Background checks do sound reasonable.
You have received some pushback from the conservative side of your party, really questioning of who's determining who's mentally stable, and thoughts that conservatives are being targeted, specifically in things like gun ownership and tax breaks and such. Do you fear that the government using the mental stability could use it against your constituents?
That's a concern, but it becomes less of one if we make sure that such mental checks can only come from licensed therapists and actual doctors, not government employees.
Okay. Thank you. Before we move into the education debate, does any of you three want to get in on this gun debate? I want to make sure that you got your thoughts out on the Second Amendment if you wished. Okay, let's move to education then, Mr. Lopez. We're worried about school shootings, but a whole lot more goes on every day in schools besides shootings, obviously. As a student who goes to school every day, what changes do you think need to be made in our education system, specifically our public education system?
If we're talking about Westside, then I say that Westside is a great school, and there's really nothing much to change about it. Just the income for the teachers themselves is another thing we need to worry about. That during inflation, the prices of all goods just rose up. So if we have more income for the teachers, it'll make it much more easier for them to just work and have a sustainable life.
Mr. Lally, what needs to change at schools? Is there anything else that needs to be changed besides teacher pay?
I think we should be able to park in the senior lot again, for sure. Otherwise, in schools, we just need to make sure that teachers are definitely getting paid more, and make sure that teachers are fit people to be around children and help those children learn, to make sure that they can do what they need to do. And we need to make sure that administration is not corrupt, and I think that's all we need.
Okay. Thank you very much. Something's been brought up several times during this debate has been energy independence. Famously, a former vice presidential candidate said the answer to our questions was drill, baby, drill. Try to get as much oil in the United States as possible. Mr. Savas, how can we become energy independent? In other words, how can we become less dependent on other countries for our energy?
I mean, I'm not really sure.
Let's ask Mr. Gerard the same question.
As I've said before, energy independence is the #1 priority, as well as tax reform in our country. Reducing dependence on foreign oil will allow us to better allocate our money wherever we want, as opposed to being at the mercy of foreign oil. How we do that is increasing funding for natural gas, oil too, but not as much, because as we all know, our planet is dying. So we need to also, as well as oil and natural gas, be investing in nuclear power, solar power, and wind power to make sure that our energy comes from the US, and to make sure that we're developing a world where we can use energy forever and not just for the foreseeable future.
A lot of your conservative counterparts have stated that solar energy and wind energy actually takes as much energy to create these things as it outputs. Is that true? Is this really an answer, or are we wasting our time with solar and wind?
In the short run, yes, it does create a lot of environmental detriment to create these massive projects, create wind and solar power. But in the long run, it helps create a more sustainable environment for the future.
Mr. Steele, do you agree with this? Solar, wind, nuclear, any concerns here with turning to these for our main sources of energy?
I believe it has to be done slowly and reasonably so as not to disrupt the lives of American citizens. There's a lot of people who rely on gasoline immediately to, heat their houses, to go to work every day. We can't just say, hey, everyone switch to electric vehicles right now. That's not a thing that will work for something like 80% of America. So, but in the future, switching to more renewable sources isn't just a good idea, it's necessary. We are going to run out of coal and natural gas. They're finite resources.
Okay, Mr. Gerard, I'm going to come back to you on this one, because this is an interesting topic that has been brought up to me recently, that more and more young people seem to be turning away from the Republican Party in the last few years. Do you have an idea of why that is and how you might be able to buck that trend?
I think it's because in the last couple of years, the polarization in America has just gotten out of hand. For instance, January 6th, that's unacceptable. A president refusing to concede, that's unacceptable. So we need to get back to a more moderate conservative party. We need to get back to a party that is built on reason and fact, not built on conspiracies and fallacies.
Mr. Lally, do you think that's the problem? Too many people in the conservative sector depending on conspiracies and not reason and thought? What do you think about that?
I mean, it's happened in the past before in history. Sides have changed all the time. People switch sides. People lean towards more sides. I just think, me being one of the leaders of the Republican Party, I want to bring everybody together. I want to be friends with all the Democrats as well, and just bring us all together, and we can share our own beliefs and opinions all together.
Mr. Lopez, keeping on the same topic, there's no doubt that one of the problems that the Republican Party is facing is that it's seen as a party of the white man. I'm assuming you don't think that's the case, but can you make a case for the Republican Party not being specifically for white people?
So it's one, what do you think about this? So one example I could say is just me. I'm Hispanic, not a white male, I would say. So that's one way. And another thing is that Republicans think of they have the American dream where you could be your self-made man, where anyone could be a millionaire, just enough to have a well-off income. And what I say is anyone could do that with just their willpower and just hard work.
Thank you for that. Mr. Savas, do you agree with that? Is that a cornerstone of the Republican Party, that anybody can pull themselves up by their bootstraps and become successful if they just work hard enough?
Yes, I think I agree with Mr. Lopez. Yeah, I think anybody can become what they want to be and stuff. So I totally agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, sir. On that same topic, I promise I'll get off this in a second, but I just wanted to give you guys a chance to defend some of the things I've seen in the newspaper about you guys. In addition to being a white person's party, you've been accused of being a men's only party. I look up here and I don't see too many female representation here. Mr. Gerard, do you care about women's rights? Is this something that you even think about, or do we just need to forget about that?
Absolutely. I think one of my major policies is, even I think it's surprising, as a Republican, I am pro-choice. I think it is an important fact that a woman should have the right to choose what she can do with her body. And you asked me about if I care about women's rights. I do have a woman on my campaign team. Olivia Joyce is my field manager for my campaign. So I think both those issues are living proof that I do care about women's rights, and it is a major platform of my policy.
Mr. Steele, you okay with your opponent here being pro-choice?
Gonna be honest, think it makes him less of a Republican. However, what he said about women's rights is absolutely correct. Everyone does have the right to do what they want with their own body.
Okay, thank you very much. With that being said, we will move on to our commercial break. Please give our candidates a round of applause.
America was built on independence. Unfortunately, today, we stand at a crossroads where our economic prosperity is put at risk. A liberal agenda threatens our energy independence, but I have a plan to put America first. Under a Gerard administration, simultaneous energy independence and middle-class tax cuts will create more jobs, create more purchasing power for the American middle class, and most importantly, thirdly, it will put more money into your pocket. This November, I want you to remember to vote for the candidate who puts Americans first, who keeps American energy independent, and who keeps the American economy as their first priority. Let's keep America free and prosperous. A vote for Gerard is a vote for a better America.
Hi, I'm Tom Steele, and if you'll pardon the pun, I'd like to steal your vote for the primary. I believe in freer, safer America, one that doesn't have to worry about hostile foreign powers or depend on unreliable foreign aid. I believe in an America where the federal government doesn't interfere in the lives of its citizens, an America that isn't torn apart by political divisions. In short, an America that's better for us all. I want to create this version of America, but I can't do it on my own. I need all of your votes to help make this dream a reality. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tommy Savage. I am pro-life. I believe that the 14th Amendment right belongs to all country and along with all the individuals. The baby has the right to live no matter what. Vote Savage today.
CNN is fake news. Chief editor is fake news.
All right, welcome back to the stage. All right, welcome back. Mr. Lally, we'll start with you. We want to move on to foreign policy. You guys, I think to a man, made it clear last week that you had no intention of sending troops to Eastern Europe to defend Ukraine, our NATO ally. So I'd like to know, what exactly should we be doing? Are we spending too much money on the Ukraine effort, or are we not doing enough to protect an ally from an invading force?
I think we're doing about just as best as we can. I personally, as a president, would not be sending any men or women over there because I want to keep everybody safe, and that includes our troops.
Mr. Lopez, the money. Is it enough money, not enough, too much money? What are we doing in Ukraine, and what should we be doing in Ukraine?
I say we're sending enough money to them. We want them to have a democratic democracy in their country, not just ruled by one person. So.
Anybody disagree with this? Anybody think we're spending too much money?
I think this money could be much better well spent in the United States to address the poverty in our country. Millions and millions of people in this country live below the poverty line. And I just think it's sort of, it's ignorant to ignore that and be sending that money thousands and thousands of miles away to a country that's not even in NATO. So I think we need to address problems domestically, people that live below the poverty line, that work hard every day and still can't make ends meet before we're sending money to a foreign country.
Mr. Steele, I'm curious your thoughts on sending too much money to Ukraine because we need to spend it on poor people in the United States.
I think we've sent $30 billion of taxpayer money to Ukraine, and we haven't even allocated FEMA resources to help people in Ohio after a chemical spill. I think the priority needs to be America, not other countries. I think we don't want America getting involved in foreign affairs.
Okay, then since you said that, you don't think we should be involved in foreign affairs, as a president, what would be your top priority for foreign policy?
Basically, staying out of it. We leave them alone, they leave us alone. America is independent. We're not an empire. We're not the arbiters of peace and war. We want to be our own country.
I don't think I'm going too far to say that Mr. Steele has articulated a position that has been different than the standard Republican position since 1941. That the United States is not an arbiter, that they need to stay out, they leave us alone, we leave them alone. Does anybody disagree with this isolationist policy?
I think a total isolationist policy is not intelligent. We need to monitor everywhere in the country. And the reason for this is America is a country that other countries look toward for weakness. They want us to be weak. They want us to fail. They want our resources. The point is we need to monitor regions like Southeast Asia for China and Russia, the Middle East for the Taliban just took back Afghanistan in the last year. The point is America does not need to be an empire, like he said. However, we do not need to be an isolationist country because we don't even know what's going on in the world if that happens.
I don't believe I've said anything about allowing America to be or appear weak, and I don't believe I've said anything about not keeping tabs on other countries. I've just said we shouldn't get involved with their business.
Okay, thank you very much. How about over here? What do you guys think the most important foreign policy issue facing our country? Anyone like to take a stab at that one, please? Mr. Lally thought about it for a second, but he's thinking maybe no. Okay, go ahead, sir.
So I did see on the email that was sent out that North Korea could have been a topic. I do just think that Donald Trump did a lot to create a friendship with North Korea, and I would like to do a lot to uphold that because North Korea is dangerous with nuclear weapons, and I think if we can get them on our side, then we can be safe.
Mr. Gerard.
I don't think there's any reason why we should be friends with North Korea. They have struck massive humanitarian rules and they abuse human rights every single day. There is no logical reason that justifies us being friends with a country that just commits these atrocities every single day.
Well, then what are we doing to help out those atrocities?
The point is, we can't be friends with a government that uses oppression to every single day against its people.
What if we could help them out? Lead them in the right direction?
So by this logic, us being friends with Kim Jong-un helps out the people of North Korea. It actually does the opposite. It enables North Korea's government to further commit those atrocities against their people.
Are you planning on helping them?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we cannot justify being friends with a government that abuses human rights violations for the last 80 years.
So to summarize this, Mr. Lopez, I hear your competitors here. What is the best way to deal with North Korea? To keep them at arm's length or to make them friends? I'm curious if you can weigh in on this.
I could see both sides of the coin, basically. So if we have them as friends, we could actually just have a better coordination and communication with them and have like a security force in North Korea so we could just see what they're doing every time. Then if we're enemies with them, we're just gonna have basically a possibility that there's gonna be a risk of terrorism, basically, of nuclear weapons being used.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Salas, I want to talk about immigration. There has been a lot in the news lately about people trying to get into the country that are undocumented. There's been debates on whether we should refer to these people as undocumented immigrants or illegal immigrants. There's a question about how many immigrants are needed in this country versus how many can be sustained. Set the record straight. What's your position on immigration in the United States?
I think we need to secure our border even more, make it more secure. That way there won't be any more illegal immigrants in the country. So yeah, I think that's what we need to do.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, secure the border. How important is this would this be to your administration?
I would not secure the border, basically. I would actually make it easier for them to become a legalized citizen instead of having them just travel illegally. They could just have documents and have a test to actually make them eligible to be citizens.
Mr. Steele?
Border security is important. No borders, no country. But I'm not against immigration. I support the idea of people moving to America, and I'm fine with the idea of people leaving America if they so wish. I am against illegal immigration. I think our border security can be strengthened, but I don't believe we should make it more difficult for people to enter the country legally and become citizens.
Okay.
An open border policy weakens our overall national security. I do think immigration is one of the most important things we have in America. It is a fundamental truth that America was built on immigration. However, illegal immigration takes away jobs and opportunities from legal immigrants who come to this country for the American dream. Now, illegal immigration, that is why it's the problem, because it takes away from the opportunities of legal immigrants.
One more question on this before we move on to our final topic. This whole topic that we discussed has been one of the most important issues brought up in the last 2 presidential elections, and it's really been diluted down to this idea of building a wall. Talk to me about the wall. Should there be a wall, Mr. Steele?
I think the idea of a physical wall is kind of short-sighted. I don't really approve of that. It doesn't seem like it would help anything. It also doesn't even seem like it'd make it harder for people to enter the country.
Mr. Driver?
I would agree. I think a material wall is probably a waste of taxpayer money. I think that money could be better spent allowing more opportunities for border agents that would actually help tighten border security, and that would also allow for more opportunities for legal immigration because it would allow more centers for asylum and for more immigration.
Mr. Lott, 2 questions. First of all, do you agree with their take on the wall, or would you like to add something to that?
Actually, I believe that the wall that we have in place now would be perfectly fit. The only thing that I want to do is mainly just stop abuse towards immigrants and stop illegal immigration and create fair jobs and keep the American dream alive for immigrants, because if they're scared to get into our country, what does that mean for us?
Why do you think this has been such a motivating factor in the campaign, this build a wall idea? If we can all agree that this is not the most effective way to fix the border issue, why do you think it's resonated so much with the American people?
I think that because of it being a physical wall, it's seen as kind of a boundary to immigrants, and I think it gets kind of the wrong look. I think if you can get into our country safely and legally, then you have every single right to.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one more topic before we move on to final statements. Okay, I want to talk about criminal justice reform. There's a lot of debate in this country about if our prisons are actually doing good for prisoners, if they're actually doing good for society as a whole. Mr. Savas, is there anything you would change about our criminal justice system?
Not really. I think it's kind of perfect, but I think we're kind of being like harsh on like the prisoners a little bit. So we gotta like like be cool with that. So opposite about that.
Mr. Gerard, too hard on prisoners?
I think the criminal justice system isn't a corrupt system overall. However, there are corrupt individuals within the system. I think the way to fix it is to be harsher on people, law enforcement, who take advantage of the system. However, the system itself is not corrupt. But we need to be more harsh for punishments on anyone in the criminal justice system that takes advantage of it.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank you guys for your professionalism and the way you conducted yourself today. And I want to remind you that this is your last chance now to let the American people know why they should vote for you when they walk into that booth. I'll call on you each individually, and I'd ask you to please give me your final statement. Mr. Savas, could you please give us your closing statement to today's debate?
I make pizza every day at the lunch for every school. Every lunch we'll have pizza, so that's why you should vote for me.
Mr. Lopez, your closing statement, please.
I just want to say that if you want to vote for someone, vote for someone that's hardworking and actually cares for the American people. So that'll be it.
Mr. Lally.
If anybody has a sweet tooth today, I have lollipops in my backpack. Let me know. I will get you some suckers.
Mr. Steele.
Well, I believe in America. I believe in people. I want to make this country the greatest it can be and keep it strong, keep it safe from its enemies. I'd also like to say that I currently have all of the delegates from the great state of Iowa, so I'm already winning this race. Keep the momentum going.
Mr. Gerard.
First of all, thank you for having me here. I think I'm the most qualified candidate for the job. I have the most endorsements. I'm leading the polls by 50 points. I think I also have the exact plan in place on how to fix this country, as opposed to just saying, let's abolish the income tax or let's abolish the sales tax. And I also have a much better foreign policy view on this country, as opposed to just being friends with a communist country that violates human rights every day. So I think I'm the most prudent choice for this country. And remember, vote Gerard for a better America.
All right, let's give all of them a round of applause.
All right, so go ahead and
All right, well, I'd like to welcome you all to the debate. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing with us your time and your talent. We really appreciate that. I know last week we had a really nice debate, all very professional, and I appreciate that, and I expect that today as well. I'd like to remind the audience, just like the Republican debate, this is not interactive. We will give you a chance to applaud these candidates during commercial breaks and at the end. But we are mostly here today to learn about their policies, where they stand, and why you should vote for them. With that being said, we will start with Majesty. Your Republican counterparts claimed to a man that the United States reaction to COVID was too strong and that it hurt us economically. Democrats have been accused of putting philosophy ahead of reality. Do you think that's true? Did you guys overstep your bounds with the Democrats' reaction to COVID-19, or do you think it was appropriate?
I do believe that the Democrats reacted appropriately. Although COVID-19 is not as prominent as it was most definitely a life-altering event for Americans, and not only the economy was affected, but precious lives were also destroyed.
Ms. Miller, your thoughts on COVID-19, please.
I agree with what Majesty is saying, especially when COVID first popped up. It hit us really hard. So many people got severely sick, so many people died. I think that we took the best course of action to prevent any more lives from being lost. Although I do believe that the government should have provided more financial aid to the people who lost their jobs and businesses.
Thank you. Arif, I want to get your thoughts on this, but maybe just to recalibrate the question a little bit. Do you think that's a fair criticism against Democrats, that while they have good ideas, they're trying to do the right thing, Republicans say that their decisions just hurt the economy too often? Do you think that we can talk about COVID-19, but just the policies in general, are you guys hurting the economy, or do you have a plan that can actually grow the economy?
I don't think we necessarily are hurting the economy on purpose. It just so happens that a lot of the plans we want to put in place are meant to help the people, and to do that it requires a lot of money, such as with something like COVID-19, where everything is shut down, so no one can get money, and we have to depend on the federal government to give us money. So I think one of the best ways that Democrats are focusing on growing the economy right now, though, is through green energy. Nuclear energy is a really positive option for our future, and if we invest more into it, we'll get a lot more jobs from that.
Okay, thank you very much. Was it Brody? What's your name again, sorry? Yeah, Brody, thank you, Brody. Sorry, Shalabash. Brody, let me know here. Do you think the response to COVID-19 was okay, and what is your plans to grow the economy? I need to turn it on. Look it up, maybe. No? Might need to get this young man a new microphone.
Oh, hello. Hi everyone, I'm Brody. So put that out there. I think we did the best we could for COVID. I think it was a little chaotic because we really could not choose to, we never really picked someone to listen to because everyone was saying their own thing. I think in any scenario the economy would have been bad during COVID. And I think we did the best we could.
Thank you for that, Brody. Let's stick with healthcare then, more of a broad sense. What would be your number one goal in terms of healthcare if you became president of the United States?
Giving everyone access to affordable healthcare.
What would be your plan to do that?
Well, I would put something in place that all Americans would be able to get free and good health care, as well as keeping a privatized health care in our system. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Majesty. It's a big statement here. He said everyone needs free health care. What do you think about that? Is that a possibility?
Well, I am all for universal health care. And first of all, we talk about healthcare as this healthcare issue, but we also need to realize for low income in communities, this is also an education issue because kids who do not have access to healthcare are more likely to not succeed in school. And we can also look at this as an issue for employment because people who do not have healthcare are less likely to succeed with their jobs. So where I stand is very clear. Healthcare is a fundamental right for all. And one thing I always thought that was very twisted was that the main argument against universal healthcare was the lack of competition within the healthcare industry. And I think that healthcare is a basic human right.
Okay, Callie, you're shaking your head. Did you want to add anything to that?
I fully agree with what Majesty has said about healthcare. I would support a Medicaid for all plan, but also keep the private healthcare if people don't want to do the government healthcare so that they can still have options to choose their own. But I fully agree that everyone deserves healthcare.
Okay. Another criticism that you guys have faced. I know I gave the Republicans a chance to defend themselves against their criticisms. I want to do the same for you. The Biden administration has been criticized as making bad decisions on foreign policy. The withdrawal of Afghanistan, the watching of the Chinese balloon as it floated across the country. Do you think that we have a problem with foreign policy in this country within your party? And if so, what would you do different? Callie?
I personally think that Biden did all that he could. With Afghanistan, there was no clean way to withdraw. I think that no matter how you put it, it would have been messy, no matter what you did. But there are still plans in place to help Afghanistan. We still have money, resources without putting our men in there. And with the balloon crisis, he talked to his advisors to make the best plan possible to make sure that no human lives would get hurt when eliminating that balloon.
Thank you. Arif, you agree there was no good way to do Afghanistan?
Yeah, I really don't think there could have been a better way to draw out of Afghanistan. Over the past 20 years, the war in the Middle East in general has really got us close to nothing. All that we've gotten is the loss of human lives on both sides, and it's basically gotten worse over there, in fact, because now Afghanistan is ruled by a totalitarian government, which happens to hate women. So, continuing to push conflict over there really would just kill more lives than is necessary, and the proper response now is really just diplomacy.
Majesty, I'll let you speak to anything that your opponents just said, but if not, what would be your number one goal in terms of foreign policy if you were to become president of the United States?
Well, just to bounce off of what they said, I do believe that Biden did everything that he could, and no one said it was going to be easy. As far as Afghanistan goes, I do believe that the United States did make efforts to provide life-saving assistance to the people of Afghanistan, and in the priorities of food security and the agriculture, but I believe that we're doing all that we can.
Okay, Brody, I'll get you the last word here on foreign policy.
I agree with them as well. I think that pulling out of Afghanistan was the right decision. We've spent over $2.3 trillion fighting this never-ending war for over 20 years. On top of that, we have lost over 900,000 Americans in the Afghan war. And I think there's no point to fight for a war when a country doesn't want to fight for itself. When the Afghan president fled the country after the Taliban invaded the capital, it was smart of us to pull our troops out because that just showed, him leaving showed us that he was not there to fight. And I think Ukraine shows us that they're there to fight, they're there for their country, and that they're succeeding. They have not been taken over by Russia yet. So, yeah, I think that, I don't know. Should have pulled out.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if we've all got our voices out there in foreign policy, let's move on to conflict at home. There has been a lot in the news about police brutality, prison systems, safety, protests, etc. across this country. Let me just give this a broad question for you, Majesty. What would be your goal in terms of criminal justice reform?
As far as criminal justice reform goes, I would like to say that the United States continues to lead the world in incarceration, which is most definitely not something to brag about. There are around 2.3 million behind bars, but I believe that we can cut the national prison population in half by abolishing the death penalty and having mandatory minimum sentences, as well as expanding the use of alternatives to detention. Instead of spending like $80 billion a year on jails and incarceration, We will invest in jobs and education for our youth. And we will reverse the criminalization of communities and cycles of violence and provide support to survivors of crime.
Okay, just to be clear, you said you want to get rid of mandatory minimal sentences, is that right? Or you want
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Arif, do you agree with this assessment?
I think that's fair, yeah. Each crime should definitely be taken on a case-by-case basis, because each basis is different. And speaking to her process, speaking to her, talking about police brutality, I definitely agree that we need to focus on that as well, because a lot of the issues in our country stem from the fact that before people even put in prison, they're already facing issues in their communities, such as the over-policing of minority areas, and the fact that a lot of police officers aren't properly trained to handle special situations. So I think one of the best ways we can actually help reform our criminal justice system is to focus on before people are actually considered criminals and making sure that they can be taken care of properly and police know how to handle situations that don't need to go south.
Callie, I want to focus on violence for a second. I brought this up to your Republican counterparts about gun violence. They said essentially that trying to take guns away from people just isn't going to solve the problem, that is not the correct answer. They pointed to background checks and something and the like. Do you believe we can make this country safer by restricting gun usage?
I absolutely believe that we can make it safer if we do restrict certain guns. Like I said in the last debate, restricting guns with high clip capacities that shoot like 50 bullets a second. We really need to push those background checks and the mental health checks on people who want to purchase a gun or who already have a gun. And next to that, we need training before someone is allowed to buy a gun.
Brody, do you agree with this?
Yeah, I do think there should be some more background checks, and I do not think people should have access to these high-powered weapons, but I do believe that every American deserves the right to own a gun, if they so choose so.
Arif, I'm gonna assume you agree with these statements. If not, I want you to go ahead and correct me and tell me where you differ. But assuming if you do agree with them, how do you justify this with the Second Amendment rights? Your Republican criticizers out there have said you can't just do something because you believe it's right. You need to follow what's written in the Constitution. How do you balance following this document, all that dates back before the 1800s, with your stance on gun control?
Well, I personally don't believe that banning weapons outright would ever actually be a possibility for this nation. There are already far too many in circulation and in, as I said, in the black market where you can buy them illegally. So getting rid of them really would never be a possibility. But we can, once again, limit the ones that are like high capacity, high fire rate, because those are dangerous and aren't actually needed for people to practice the Second Amendment right. Regular handguns and rifles do the job just as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I want to move on to energy, okay? Arif, we can start with you. Democrats have been accused of pushing electric cars, solar, wind energy too quickly, and that they're causing more harm than good. We saw some serious problems with the electric grid, for example, in California this summer. Are we being too aggressive in this field, or are we not being aggressive enough?
I think we're more misguided than aggressive. As I said, nuclear energy, I believe, is the most efficient way to get green energy in our nation. We're putting a lot of money towards solar and wind energy, which really isn't as efficient as you stated earlier. So what we can do is instead focus on, building nuclear energy, which would be more sustainable for our people and have less problems for the foreseeable future.
Majesty, I want to make sure you hear what he just said. Nuclear energy is the answer here. Is that what you believe? That's the number one priority? Should be nuclear energy, or should it be solar, wind, electric cars, etc.?
I do agree with what he said partly. However, I would more push for renewable energy.
Callie, I see you shaking your head. Did you want to go ahead and detail your plan on clean energy?
Renewable energy, like Majesty said, there's so many different ways to get fuel without using oil and coal and things that hurt our environment. And like with oil, we get a lot of oil from other countries, So I think that if we gradually start to switch to those renewable energy and green energy sources, then it will greatly help our economy as well as our environment.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's hear a round of applause for these guys as we go to a commercial break.
It was my understanding that everyone heard what? Right? Don't tell me I hate
Intolerance. In today's America, we're far too divided. People either love guns or they hate them. They're pro-life or they're pro-choice. They're far right or they're far left, and so on. We have no middle ground, and that often clouds our judgment. I'm personally a strong advocate for immigration reform, gun control, women's choice, and free healthcare. But at the same time, I'm a realist. If we as a nation continue to only accept yes as an answer, we'll never progress. That's why the one thing I believe is the most important for any democratic nation is compromise. Because when we work together, we make it better.
My name is Callie Miller, and I want to fight for a better America. I fight for the environment, accessible healthcare, accessible education, women's healthcare, gun reform, and LGBTQ rights. I fight for what's right for the American people.
Hi, my name is Miriam. I'm 15 years old, and it takes me by surprise when I say the word. You think I should know what that means? It was just last year when I learned the word. Well, now that I think about it, I learned it when I was 10. My mom said I should know what means. I guess she's untraditional because people hate when I say. Why can't I say it? Why can't I say? We need to talk about it. And why it's not such a bad word after all. Saves lives.
Abortion saves lives.
Vote? Just kidding. Come on in. I'm Rudy Keeling, and I'm ready to be your president.
That debate last week kind of sucked. What are your thoughts on that?
Stage fright. Come along. I know I left you guys all with many questions. Who am I? What am I? Gay. A man of Jesus. You're probably wondering, what are the policies I support? I'm pro-LGBTQ rights. I'm pro-women. I'm also for lowering the drinking age, because why should you be able to serve a country but not get a nice drink afterwards? And I'm also for legalizing weed, because just have a little bit more fun in life.
And why should voters want to vote for you?
Why wouldn't you want to vote for me?
Brody, critics and writers claim that you're unprepared and that your campaign is a joke. What do you have to say about this?
As Taylor Swift once said, haters gonna hate. Come on.
Wait, Brody, one more question.
Yes.
Gay son or thought daughter?
What?
I'd like to welcome you guys all back to the end of this debate. Brody, you have mentioned in your commercials in several spots that that LGBTQ rights are important to you. What specific rights does this community not have that you wanted to have?
I just think that, like, I guess that people just like are still not accepting LGBTQ people for who they are, and it's not more of rights; it's more of just acceptance for what they want to do and choice of their life.
Thank you. Areeb, in your commercials, we have noticed the theme of compromise, of moderation. Would you say that's correct?
Sure.
How can you have a moderate, compromising stance on, let's say, immigration? We've heard so much talk about building the wall, not building the wall, securing the borders, not securing the border. How could you make a policy that pleased both the people on the right and the left on this issue?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people on the left are personally afraid of policies that totally close the border, such as building a wall A lot of people on the right are totally afraid of policies such as opening the border entirely because that invite too many immigrants inside. What I do think is the best solution and the middle ground is making immigration easier for legal immigrants, because most people that want to be in this country actually have what's it called, skills to provide for the nation. So making it easier for them to come inside will actually improve our economy and make us more diverse overall, which can help make us a better nation.
Majesty, do you agree with this, or is he giving too much into the right on this idea of immigration?
I do believe what he was saying. I think we can do the best we can by just making sure the process to get into this country is just very detailed. I do think the process can be quicker, and I do feel like we can be a little harsh against immigrants, but this country is a nation of immigrants, so we can't be, I can't find the right word, but yeah.
Okay, Callie, so I'm hearing we need to make it detailed, but we need to make it quick. We need to be secure, but we also need to be welcoming. Seems like a stiff challenge. What would be your plan?
I think that we should have a strong border, no wall, but we should keep illegal immigrants out, but make it easier for legal immigrants to come in, get a work visa, just live here. And at the moment, there's a quota system that limits the amount of immigrants that we can get in our country, and I want to eliminate that completely.
Okay, Brody, I want to give you a chance to talk about immigration if you'd like, but I also want to connect this to your Republican counterparts, connecting this issue of immigration with jobs, both the need for immigrants for jobs and also the problems that it creates if you have a mass immigration into the country. What are your thoughts on immigration, and maybe separate or connected to that, your thoughts on creating jobs for Americans?
I think the statement saying that they're taking our jobs is stupid, because if they're taking your job, then they are more qualified than you. And I think that we should keep what we have now with the wall, but I think it should be easier to get into the United States and get your green card. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Looking at the economy and looking at our tax system, during the Trump administration, we saw a massive reduction in taxes. We've seen this increasing in some ways in some communities since then. Majesty, in general, do we pay too many taxes? Are we not paying enough? What do you think the American people need to do as far as their tax liability?
I just believe that we should have a flat tax rate. I think we should hold corporations and the wealthier to the standard of paying taxes like everyone else.
Press you a little bit on your flat tax. What exactly would a flat tax look like in your administration?
I'm not positive on the percentage. I just believe that everyone should be held accountable.
Okay, Arib, are we okay with a flat tax?
I think that increasing the amount you pay, the higher you go up in the tax bracket, is something that is necessary for the nation. Billionaires really don't need all that money. That doesn't do anything extra for them. It's kind of stockpiles for the future generations of their family. What they can do, though, is give back to the country that gave them so much money and ensure that other people can maybe one day do that themselves.
Kelly?
I fully agree with what Arib is saying about tax being based on income, and as well with like billionaires. That money just sits there. If you tax them and that money goes into schools or anything else, it boosts the middle class, boosts jobs, and there's also a problem with corporations not paying taxes. In 2022, 56 corporations did not pay any money in taxes, and we really need to push for those big corporations to pay their fair share.
Tax policy, Brody.
I'm agreeing with everyone else here. I think the richer you are, the more taxes you should pay. It should be fair. I think that there's no reason a teacher should pay more taxes than a billionaire because they can find loopholes in the government and the law.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Speaking of money, in this country, we have a deficit. Obviously, it's been growing, and you guys have all talked about your plans for taxes. I'm curious, where are we spending too much of our money, and where are we not spending enough? Maybe we'll start with you, Brody. Do you have any ideas on this? Where could we be spending our money better in this country?
Well, I think we should first start by raising minimum wage to at least $14 an hour over the next 4 years. It would greatly reduce the issue of non-livable wages. I think with that, you could, right now, working at a minimum wage job will not support you at all. And I think that is wrong. I think you should be able to work a minimum wage and be able to live.
Majesty?
As I said earlier, instead of spending billions a year on incarceration, I believe that we should take that money and give it back to the community with the educating our youth, ending cycles of violence, and like I said, the decriminalization of communities.
Marie?
I'm in full agreement with what Ashley said. Giving back money that doesn't need to be in places where it already is, such as the criminal justice system or the army. There's a lot of money there that doesn't really need to be there, considering we're already ahead, we're already #1 by a long shot with our military. So we can use that to put back into our communities and build us stronger from the inside.
Okay. Callie, you can go ahead and talk about where you'd spend more or less money, but it seems to be a theme here. I do want to talk to you about one more thing before we move on to our closing statements, and that is money in connection with criminal justice and some of the things you guys have talked about. A very controversial catchphrase that came up within the last few years was defund the police. This has caused a lot of problems with previous Democratic campaigns, whether they do or do not want to, quote, defund the police. What did this mean? What does this mean to you? And what are your thoughts on police funding?
To me, it doesn't mean like completely get rid of the police system. I think it means reform it. The police system is very messed up. I think that the money that goes into the police system should be spent more towards training the officers and mental health care for the officers. And I think that overall, the police system just needs to be reformed.
Majesty, your thoughts on defunding the police?
I do completely agree with what Callie said. However, I do want to say I think the statement defund the police could have been taken as a metaphor and not necessarily as literal as it means, because you can't defund the police, but I agree with what she said of how we have to reform the police system.
Okay, before we get into closing statements, would either one of you like to get in on the defunding the police discussion?
Yeah, I can't really add anything on to what they said.
Okay. All right, Brody, I want to give you your chance then to just talk to the American people. I want to thank all of you guys for being so professional today and answering my questions. But this is your one last chance to let them know exactly why they should vote for you, why you are the person for the job. Brody, go ahead.
First off, I want to thank everyone for being here and listening to me today. I want to point out that whether or not you support me, I still want to be your president. Hopefully I didn't bore you guys today. God bless America.
Callie.
I want to thank all of you for being a gracious and considerate audience and listening to me speak today. I think that each one of these candidates is very intelligent and has a great vision for the future of America. And rally behind Callie.
Marie.
I think I might be the best candidate up here today because I believe most firmly in compromise. I want to make the name of our nation true. We are the United States of America, so why aren't we united? For too long we've been split in the middle from the Republican and Democratic parties, and I really want to bring us together and make sure that we can progress forward as a nation and not just one side at a time.
Majesty.
One thing I would like to point out that has to connect to previous debates. Well, the fact, first off, everyone here on stage is part of a group that has been discriminated against, whether that would be being a person of color, a part of the LGBTQ community, or even just being a woman. It is important. It is an important part of who we are. I'm looking at you, Tom. The reason that people mention identity in politics so much is because identity is what helps us connect with people, and politics is all about connecting. And I would like to end my statement off with a quote. As Langston Hughes once said, "I swear to the Lord, I still can't see why democracy means everybody but me." Thank you.
All right, let's give them a round of applause.
All right, so I'm not sure if the polls are working for you or not.